we are live. Hooray.
Hooray!
Welcome back to What Could Go Wrong, which is still the most perfect name for the show.
It is.
We're finding, I learned, for all you people who aren't Restream pros, that if you don't schedule an event an hour before you're ready to do it, you can't do one of those little remindy things on LinkedIn. So we learned that today. I still don't really know if I am going to be able to see chat or not.
And I still don't know if my internet's going to work.
And I only see a really great pixelated version of your face. So
hopefully
there's that too.
And overcome the lack of seeing anything I'm saying.
So it's fine. But we'll see if maybe the comments work this time. I feel like I've taken care of the dog situation for now, and we're wearing coordinated colors. So
one thing could go right. That was unplanned.
It's obviously the coordination of our colors that we planned.
Yes. Well, I feel like, it's just like the epitome of what could go wrong. Throw it out there, see what sticks. And if the only thing that sticks today is that we coordinated our colors on accident,
I like it.
At least there's one win.
I really feel like that's a good win. I mean, if there was going to be a win, I'm all for that one.
It could be worse.
So we are now officially on episode 2 because yesterday counts. I'm counting it because a really great gift came from it. And I always call that a win because gifts are my love language, apparently. So I don't know if anybody's here or not, but we're just going to go for it.
Perfect.
And kick back into the conversation about going back to relationships and education before everything falls apart.
Yeah. We might only have a small window.
We have this much time before, we got to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
And I just finished my peanut butter M&M, so I'm ready to talk now.
Let's do it.
Okay. All right. So give a short intro again for, all the people who missed out on the fun that was yesterday.
So first of all, my name is Schniers, and I just want to be Chelsea when I grow up. I told her the first time that I met her on Zoom, a Zoom that worked better than today's live stream. I was a teacher for 13 years. I was a speech and debate coach at Central High School in San Angelo, Texas for 13 years. I only ever taught high school. I love education. I love the opportunity to make an impact. And I do believe that our teachers are the front lines of making an impact in our world today. With mental health illness and broken homes sitting in the places that they're sitting, I feel like educators are sitting in the most unique position to make the biggest difference, which right now, on top of the COVID stress that's being placed on our teachers, feels a little bit like one more thing. But my hope is that I can help everyone flip their focus to seeing it as an opportunity and to exploring how we can do that better. So I speak now and I consult with school districts about how to goal set as a team, goal set as individuals, to create relationship bonds that are better from leadership to faculty and faculty to students. That's what I do. And I also am the Director of External Relations and Strategic Partnerships at Angelo State University. So there's me in a nutshell.
Also the Director of Strategic Partnerships and something else that you said things, but it was a long title. But just that. It's fine.
It doesn't. I mean, I do a thing.
Well, I do things, and people pay me for it.
They're fun and they're impactful, and I feel like I make a difference. And isn't that what this is the world's about? Just enjoy your job so you don't really work every day. It's a thing.
And try to remember your title.
Mm-hmm. Like I try to remember my last name. Yeah.
Also that. So Alfonso he hosts a podcast called My EdTech Life. And I have stickers of it all over, although I can't find one. But he had me on a while back and we chatted, and he talked about this Chelsea Nuggets, hashtag Chelsea Nuggets. So it sounds completely normal. I like it. And when I chatted with him, the answer to all the questions was relationship. It was just like, what do you think about that, Chelsea? I was like, well, I think the answer is relationship. And so I tried really hard to look for a different answer, but there wasn't really one because I feel like it all ends up coming back to relationship anyway.
Me too. It answers a
So
lot of questions.
it really does. And it solves many problems. Healthy relationship solves many problems. I feel like that's definitely a precursor.
Let's pretend that we live in that perfect world.
Okay.
I've learned I have to really walk the line of how I say things in a professional world, in a professional way. But relationships are crucial in a professional world, in a professional way. Yes.
Yeah, yes. Because we should cover all the bases as we introduce the value of relationships in an educational setting.
Yes.
Didn't even dawn on me, but good plan. Okay, so yesterday we kind of touched on how we see relationships benefiting students inside the classroom, and then really the role that teachers have to play inside of that. And then in an even bigger picture, the role that leadership has to play inside of that, because we know that everything has this ripple effect.
Right.
And if we want the students to be impacted in a quality way, the teachers have to be providing that. If we want the teachers to have, the ability to provide that, then it needs to come from school administration. And so you shared a little bit about what you've seen in school administration and some cool people that you've worked with, and how we know that the leaders of schools really set the tone for what trickles down all the way to the students. And I've seen that as well. I've actually done some work for Advanced Ed, which is now Cognia, the accrediting service. And so when we go into schools as an engagement review member for the team, we meet with everyone. So we get to interview all the stakeholders, students, parents, teachers, right? Superintendents, administration, and either it goes one of two ways, right? Either the story is the same throughout because it's organic, or the story is being told one way by the superintendent, the administration, as if this is how we want it to be and how we think that it is, but we're not really quite connected enough to see a difference. So we just assume that it happens this way. And then the teachers, families, students, and all that are telling a completely different story. And there's this huge gap between what their mission statement says, which is what their superintendent, their administration is quoting, and what's actually happening inside of the classroom.
It's exactly like when you tell your children before you go to your mom and dad's house what the story is. Okay, listen, kids. This is what we're telling people. Okay. There's gonna be some translation lost, and then if it's not through and through genuine, mom and dad are gonna figure out, right?
Yeah. I mean, not that that's ever happened to me, but if it had, it could have been like, hey, make sure that when we get there, this is why we were late. Okay.
Exactly. Especially the translations coming from a third grader and a kindergartner. There's going to be pieces lost.
Yeah, I mean, that's always a struggle. So
it's a great,
I know we see
model, an example of exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, because something's missing in between. So I feel like the answer is relationship. But I want to kind of ask you, can you expand on that a little bit? What do you really think some of the more tangible pieces are missing in that when you see that type of gap?
Well, when we're talking through this example and I'm throwing my children in my real life into that example, it's not just relationships, it's honesty, right? Yeah. But I think that the reality is we have this idea that we want it to be. We want our teachers to feel like they're in a place that they're happy. We want our teachers to want to venture out. We want our teachers to be able to challenge those students to try and fail as long as they're engaged. Right? But if we're not giving teachers the feeling that they can try and fail as long as they're engaged and that they're supported and that they're happy working with you, then that's not going to trickle down. So the relationship difference is that honesty doesn't have to be a worry when it's real, right? When it's real and it is organic, like you said, we're going to be able to look through a whole different lens because it's actually there. And that gives you a couple of really great things. One, it gives you the opportunity to see what could really be wrong, because maybe there are other issues that are not leadership drawn. Maybe there's other reasons that the community is not exactly on. Maybe it's a PR issue. It gives you the ability to see it for what it is if everyone actually is on the same vision. But I think it's one of the biggest problems is that we have an idea. When I say we, it could be a school district, it could be a business. Like, we have this idea of what we would like to be seen as. I would like to be remembered as the principal who made teachers love their job. But what are you doing every single day to make teachers love their job? One of the things I talk about in my talk is you've got to think through the legacy link. You are going to be remembered. That's the reality. The question is, how
for better or for worse,
going to be remembered? And you can't say, like if you're writing my obituary today, write good things. And people will be like, oh yeah, she did that. Okay, right? Like, it has to actually be there. So when you're leaving a
Says who?
I mean, I feel like
I'm gonna write my own obituary and just put it aside.
my own obituary so that what I want said is said. The perfectionist in me is fine with that. But I would much rather people want to get up and talk about, she made a difference in this way. She made me confident. She made me think outside the box. Like, I want those things to be real. And in order for them to be real, you have to actually work towards that every single day. You can't just wish happiness. You can't just wish that you make an impact. The question is, what are you doing every day to make that happen? And that's a question I think every leader should be asking. What do I want my legacy to be? How do I want to be remembered? And what's my plan in accomplishing that? Writer Catherine Patterson says, a dream without a plan is just a wish. So you can't wish and through.
Right. There has to be those two pieces. Otherwise, you're just swirling inside of this. And so one thing that I have used with teams that I've worked with in the past, something I talk about now is what's your culture filter, right? So if you have something that you want, how are you tangibly getting to that place through the actions that you're talking about? So for example, at the school that I worked at previously, our culture filters, the words that we took all of our actions through was relationship and collaboration. And so in the simplest of ways, for example, if the teachers wanted to host a Thanksgiving party, right, or whatever, they would come to me and say, hey, can we make sure that Thanksgiving party's on the calendar? And I would say, yeah, absolutely. How are we encouraging relationship and collaboration inside of this? And then they would have to filter the action through those two words to make sure, okay, well, are we encouraging relationship and collaboration with this event instead of just doing this event? And so we used it across all kinds of different things. And one thing that we worked on a lot when I was brought into that school was to shift the curriculum from this really heavy worksheet academic focus in early education, and into this project-based Reggio Emilia inquiry-inspired type setting. And that took a big mindset shift, right? They had to go from everything's a worksheet, you just check it off these boxes, to now we're looking for engagement. And their art projects, their art projects also ended up being like the teacher did it and they all look the same at the end. And so we would go and say, look, if you spent more time doing that project than the child, were you creating a space for relationship and collaboration? Yes or no? And so that gave us a very easy, what I call a filter, to take our actions through to see if they really were true to what our values were. And we knew that relationship and collaboration were our core values that we wanted to create. And so if we were going to get to that place, the tiny actions we were doing every day were what was going to get us there. And so we had to take everything that we did through, okay, is this relationship and collaboration? Is this relationship collaboration? And the cool thing was, the more I, shoved it down their throats in a beautiful and lovely way, obviously, the more you saw it. The more the teachers are then saying to each other, hey, are we creating relationship and collaboration with that? And it became kind of this self-sustaining model. It's like we were talking about, then it became organic, not me telling one story and them telling another. It's then became this organic experience for the whole school.
Yes, I love that. And it really truly is just creating an action plan until the planning is part of your everyday. And it's not it's not one more thing to do, it's a norm. So until what we want to happen is norm, you have to be proactive in that. And I think that's one of the things that I struggle with some of the people that I get to work with. Like, well, that's a lot more work. Like that's going to be extra. If you want to change anything, it's going to be a little bit extra. I had a devotion once that told me growth is going to be pain, right? Because in order for you to grow, you're going to have to lose something. And when you're losing something, that means that you're changing something. But if you're changing something, then you've got this opening for growth. But that means that there's going to be a loss and it's going to be painful. If you're going to get any kind of growth in any area of your life, but especially when you're talking education, when you've got so many people involved, so many stakeholders, and so many mindsets, there's going to be pain. So really and truly, if you are hitting some pain, you might be making some progress because it's just inevitable. But if you've got a goal in mind and you can create a plan for it, the closer you or the more that you keep working, the closer you're going to get to accomplishing that organic that you saw happen in that school.
Yeah, because I think another thing that I wanted to kind of pick your brain on was we talk about building relationships and it's kind of this high level, beautiful thing, right? It's unicorns and rainbows, relationships make everything better. Yes. But in reality, there's some real nuts and bolts to how you do that. So what are kind of those tangible action steps to building relationships inside the classroom once we get down from the beauty and the rainbows of it?
Yes. Well, you know what? I'm looking in the chat as I answer that, and it says communication is a key factor. Lots of teachers don't know how to communicate that message to the students. And I know that is truth. Okay, where I'm pointing which way towards the chat on the screen.
I put it on the screen.
I know that's true. And I hear when I speak with school districts, well, you're good at relationship building because that's who you are. If you work with humans, you need to be good at that, right? Like if you aren't good at it, then let's see what we can do to get better. Let me tell you something. I'm not good at working out. I'm not. Like I don't like doing it. I don't want to do it. I was not athletic as a child. I'm 5'10" almost, and I never played volleyball or basketball. I played golf for credit. I know. The first time people see me, they're like, oh, you were a volleyball player. And I'm like, no, they're like, oh, basketball. It's like, how about theater, speech and debate, student council, choir? I sang. I'm a huge disappointment. I did all things fine arts. I was not athletic, okay? I'm still not good at it. But
I'm terribly disappointed.
I know, but I'm over that bothering my heart. So it's okay. Carry on. Be disappointed. But I am still trying super hard to work out for my own health because I want to be healthy. I want to be able to play with my kids. I want to feel comfortable on the beach. And I really want to live a long life. So even though I'm not good at it, and even though I don't like it, I work at it, right? So if you aren't good at relationship building in, just like a natural state, it's okay. But you're still dealing with humans unless you work by yourself in the middle of nowhere. So if you are dealing with humans, then relationships are inevitable. So in the realm of relationship building, there is more than one way to skin the cat. And I know that. But to the people that I'm like, I don't know how to do it and I'm not good at it, here are some tools. And that's what I've worked on fine-tuning. What are the things that worked in my classroom with my students, with the teams that I was in charge of? What worked best, the fastest, and the easiest, so that you had a starting place that you felt like you could move from. Just like the person who helps me at the gym starts me out slow, right? Like they're like, let's start with the 10 pounds. Now the 15, look at you go, right?
I don't feel like my trainer was the same as yours because I went to like a MMA trainer for a little bit and he was just like straight up, I'm going to punch you in the face and let's see what happens.
Well, that you might also have better muscles than me. I did have a person when I was like looking at burpee number 30 go, now how often do you work out? I'm like, I work out, I run 2 miles a day. These burpees are not my thing. All that to say,
got a little defensive to that trainer, did you?
Find what works. But here are some tools that are easy to start out with. So I worked through the tools after lots of conversation and lots of digging and lots of, what works best. And I developed, because I'm a teacher, what do you know, an acronym. And it's LEAN.
Of course you did. It's adorable.
Right? Like, and then I can sing it to you, like, lean on me. And now you'll never forget it, right? And you're singing it in your head for the rest of the day. And hopefully singing that song in your head will remind you to be a better relationship builder. But the LEAN has a thing that it stands for. And I talk through it. We give examples. It's a lot more fun and interactive. But just to give you some insight, the L is for legacy link. We talk about, how do you want to be remembered? The reality is, those kids are not going to look back. And we talked a little bit about it yesterday. They're not going to look back and go, man, this teacher was so great at teaching quadratic equations. Like, they're going to look back and go, she made me feel good about myself. She's the reason
I never had an
I wanted to move on to college. She's the reason that I believed that I could go join speech and debate or whatever it was, right? There are more important pieces to life than getting through the goals you have in mind, right? So I think being aware of your surroundings and how you are impacting your circle of influence is really, really important. And thinking through the lens of, how do I want to be remembered, is the first step. Because you're going to be remembered. We said that earlier. We could talk about
I'm writing my own eulogy. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Well, write some good stuff. Give it to me earlier, and I'll work it up so that I can say it with good conviction. Okay, so then the E in LEAN is for eye contact. And I talked today actually in a call about the importance of eye contact, probably now more than ever. I mean, we're all masked up, but we're all, we're trying to roll into this normal world of, I'm busy, because everything's still spinning the way it was spinning, but we have all these really weird things that we're having to do, protocols, but life's still busy. And it might be busier because people are like, oh, it's on Zoom. You don't have to drive to me. So I'm done. Zoom to Zoom to Zoom to Zoom to Zoom, right? So I do think when you're out and about, or you're with people that are your people, your circle of influence, whether it's your students or your employees, your family, that you stopping, putting your phone down, not trying to answer an email while you're talking, just stop and focus.
I've gotten some really fun emails out of that. I don't know. I'm just saying.
You know what? I'm a habitual multitasker, fun or not. This is something I have to remember, even because my kids will talk to me and I'll be like, okay, one more second. I'm like, oh yeah, no, I can listen and text this out.
Yeah. And then your text turns out weird. And you're like, what did I just send?
And it's fun if it's a friend. It's not fun if it's business. And you're like, wait, I take that back.
I mean, it's not.
But eye contact. Eye contact builds trust. It makes an impact.
Always.
It builds confidence in those that you're showing you are important enough for me to give you eye contact. It's communication 101, but we don't teach public speaking in most of our high schools anymore because of House Bill 5. So in the realm of nonverbal communication, eye contact is an easy, free, impactful way to make people feel important. And it's a gateway to other nonverbal triggers that all of society can be a little bit better at when we're such a techie world. And then the A stands for asking and answering your questions. And I always say, that's just communication. Like in general, that's not even like nonverbal. That's just talk.
Yeah, it's engaging. Yeah.
It's engaging. And I tell the story that I have a friend, and she is sweet and kind, and everything is always sunshine and rainbows, and it's wonderful. And I love that about her. And she's the very last person I would ever share my struggles with. Right? Because if she's always great and always on, and things are always wonderful, I can't give her my mess.
There's nothing, she can't relate to any of that.
It feels like that, right?
Yeah.
And the same is true for a teacher. And it's not like, and we talked earlier about, it's a professional line, of course, but if you're never going to share with your students, do not expect them to share with you. If you're never
Right.
going
It's
to
the
stop,
humanize piece of it, right? Humanize education, humanize the workforce, that whole bit.
if you're never going to stop and ask and answer questions, don't expect them to ask and answer questions. So you're not going to dig deeper. You're not going to build that relationship. It's just not going to happen. You can't say I'm a good relationship builder if they don't know anything about you.
Mm-hmm.
And then the N is for notes and quotes. We talk about the power of.
I love that it rhymes.
Thank you. Thank you. I was a speech and debate coach. Poetry is my favorite event, so here. It worked out well. But I say notes and quotes because I believe in the power of writing a note, like handwritten thank you notes. And I was notorious for writing notes to my students and sliding them like under their notebook, like, hey, I see that you're having a bad day. I want you to know I'm cheering you on. And so I have a set that I made of quotes that you could just like hand out because people were like, I don't know what to write. Okay, great. Let me write some things out. And all my little quote cards are made from things that I gave to kids at some point, like words that I gave to them, encouragement. So that's kind of fun. And I'm working on those pieces. But you can just slide notes. And if you don't know what to say, the internet's a beautiful thing. Steal someone else's quote, which is why I said notes and quotes. Like, still, if your heart is saying, I need to tell this kid everything's going to be okay, go find a quote on Google that says, sign that person's like a quote from, and then just sign, thinking about you, Miss Schniers. You know, they'll know the intent, because the reality is that taking the time to give a thing that they can hold on to is going to be more impactful than just saying, hey, you're going to be okay. Because that verbal, you're going to be okay first period wears off by seventh period and they're still struggling, right?
Or 5 minutes later. It's fine.
Right? So for me to be able to hold it in my hand and remember that Miss Schniers believes in me and I need to believe in myself could be a little more impactful. I mean, and think about, if you're sentimental, which I know that I am and some people aren't, when I left the classroom, I had like a box of notes that kids had given me that I still have, that when I do something difficult, I will go pull out a good note that reminds me. And I had a student who graduated from Stanford, and I taught him like 8 years ago. But he said, man, before every one of my exams in med school, I would go to the little quote jar of all the quotes that he'd ever given me, and I would pull a quote out. It mattered to him later. It doesn't matter for everyone. I understand that. But the ability to hold on to something, for you to have taken the time to have cared that much and to have been willing to share with that student or that employee that you care, those are two vulnerable, impactful pieces that build relationships.
Yeah, because I think there's a difference between caring and showing that you care, because we can care all we want, but if we never verbalize that or put it into action, then it doesn't have the impact. You're impacting yourself, but not the other person. So here, Enrique says, we should improve emotional intelligence in teachers. And what's your response to that one?
So, well, I was a teacher for 13 years. I had 13 student teachers and 5 student observers throughout my 13 years, which means I had a student teacher early on. I had a lot of double semesters, right? In those 13 years, I had all kinds of student teachers, incredible people. And then some that struggled, right? Like, reality is. Every single one of them, this is what I would say is true. They could write a 10-page lesson plan that these universities are asking these teachers to push out. All honesty, I never wrote a 10-page lesson plan. I'm not sure that I ever wrote a 2-page lesson plan. And by the time I had been teaching for 1 year, I wasn't writing a 1-page lesson plan. So the idea that your lesson plan is more important than understanding hearts and minds, and exactly what he's saying, building that emotional intelligence, understanding, and how to navigate that in the classroom, that was missing. Teaching our new teachers how to focus on that puzzle piece is going to be the game changer in education. And it is one of the reasons why I felt like I could make an impact outside of the walls of my classroom. And honestly, I didn't leave my classroom until I'd had 4 or 5 students who graduated and were doing things in their life come to me on different occasions and say, you know what, Schniers, you're the only one who did this for me. And I really think that you should be talking about this. Like, oh, that's so sweet. Oh, I love that you believe in me.
You're adorable.
Good at believing in me as much as I was good at believing in you. It's so neat how full circle it's turned. But it was when those kids were like, really and truly, this is an issue, and I'm still seeing it in college, that I'm going, man, we have this gap in education, and the emotional intelligence understanding of what we are working with is that gap. And of course, when I start researching, and I know that this isn't exactly what we wanted to talk about today with relationships and education and growth mindset, but just to throw it out there, studies show that 1 in 7 students walks through their entire day feeling like the teacher does not care, not one teacher cares about them personally. That 50% of our students are not involved in an extracurricular. So you don't have a band teacher who spends a lot of extra time going, man, something's wrong with this kid. We need to check on him, right? You have a math teacher season once a day who's got a lot of kids and is struggling, right? Because they've got all of these pieces that they have to fit into their math lesson. So if you're that kid that's 1 in 7 and you're 50%, and then you're looking at like 15.32 million students are coming from broken homes. And I'm saying broken homes, like I'm not dogging any single mother who's trying to make it work. But reality is, if you're a single mom working 2 jobs and your kid is dealing with a lot of things at school, you might not notice all the parts. So your village should be those educators, right? And when 73% of our students are going to college having experienced one of the top 5 mental health issues, suicide, depression, anxiety, eating disorders, and addiction, 73%. I mean, this is not something we can ignore, people. I mean, if our English STAR scores were as bad as these mental health issues that we're talking about, we would have interventions everywhere. Why are we not looking through this lens differently? Which is why I talk about, we got to flip our focus. 1 in 12 of your students are suicidal. 1 in 12.
1 in 12. That's not a joke number. And I think going back to the lesson plan you were saying, where these teachers are writing this 10-page lesson plan, right? If I were to take that through a filter of relationship and collaboration, who's that lesson plan really about? Who's it for? Where's the white space for relationship and collaboration? Because I guarantee you're not going to have enough time to get through all 10 pages and have a conversation that allows for engagement from the students and relationship building and those types of things. So who's the lesson plan really for, I think, is the question. And either it's for the teacher or it's for the administration. But I would challenge that very rarely, if at all, is a lesson plan of that density for the child, for the student, because where's the white space? Where's the blank space that allows for the human to be involved in it rather than just the academic focus? But where's the conversation? Because when I was teaching, I taught a program, a transitional kindergarten classroom. So these were the kids that were too old for pre-K, but too young for kindergarten. So they needed that extra year. And we focused mostly on social emotional intelligence, right? How are we creating relationships and engagement, those types of things. And so, for example, when we would schedule morning meeting, it was a 30-minute thing. And we had all kinds of different activities and up and down and dancing and, you know, all those types of things. But I only planned 10 minutes of it. And the remainder of the time was child-led. It was engagement. It was, hey, can we do, right? I mean, it was focused on the child. And so one of my pet peeves, or one thing I challenge a lot when I was working with teachers who were creating lesson plans, especially in the ECE setting, is if you have planned your day, even 50% of your day in an ECE setting, I don't believe that your day is focused on the child. The day is focused on the lesson plan, where that's not really what we're doing, because we're looking to follow that child. And so if you're planning a 10-page lesson plan, where are you following the child? Well, show me where that happens.
Flows straight back to where we started, which we talked a little bit about yesterday. If that teacher feels in their heart that they need that whole lesson plan solidified down to those details, that's coming from above.
Right.
And how do you help a teacher who wants to be better at emotional intelligence, who wants to be able to reach students and build those relationships, but struggling to get it all in? That's something that I'm hearing in COVID world a lot. The
Mhm.
things that are being piled on our educators is too much. It's
Yeah.
so much. And some school districts have done a really good job of taking things off of teachers' plates, and some haven't. So, what do you say to a teacher who is out of options? They are not the administrator. They cannot control their administration. What do we say to those people? And I think that's where the struggle is.
Yeah, because it's non-quantifiable theoretically. So if it can't be measured, it can't be funded. You know, that whole rabbit trail that we go down. So I mean, it really does fall at the hands of the administration and what they're going to allow and not allow, and you know, all those types of things. Um, Enrique says, "What's the percentage of kids diagnosed with ADD and ADHD?"
You know what? I
What you
don't know
got for
that
that one?
percentage off the top of my head.
I don't know that percentage, but I can say I worked with students exiting preschool settings, ECE settings, and into elementary, right? So leaving private and going into public. And we had class sizes of about 12 kids, and at least 4 of the 12 every year would have some sort of diagnosis.
Yeah.
And I would even say to parents, there were times I would sit down with them before their kiddo graduated and say, look, here's what the public school will say to you regarding your child. And here are just questions I would ask, and here are things I would look for, and here are the things I would try. And I did some advocacy work with families for a while who are leaving my school and going into public school and getting these diagnosis or labels. That's a whole different rabbit trail that we could just hop right on down. But I don't have a specific percentage for that, but it's high.
It is.
And
well, and of
that
course,
could all
even
go
in
back
high
to
school
curriculum.
world. So, but I coached debate, and realistically, we did well with kids who were ADD and ADHD. I might have some ADD tendencies. My brother was ADHD in school, and my mom was
I
like,
have ADHD,
yeah,
so it's
okay,
fine.
yeah. But I mean, no shame, right? Because the value in that is also truth in there. In speech and debate world, these kids were the ones who were able to roll with so many different ideas at the same time. You know, we always had a lot of things happening, and those kids could handle the spin of how crazy real life got. They could deal with the stresses of having multiple things needing to be going on in their head, because that's what their head did. So I also coached quite a few kids that were ADD and ADHD, but I don't know if that is a good reflection of numbers, since we kind of draw, and because our program was like, I don't really care what you got going on, we're going to make it work. So just the idea, the mentality of our program drew.
And it's a spectrum. I mean, ADHD, the same as ASD or all these other type of things. I mean, you're looking at a spectrum, huge spectrum, right? Because I have ADHD, my youngest daughter has ADHD, and ours manifests very differently. So it's a huge spectrum that is hard to kind of quantify exactly what that looks like. Very similar to ASD, those other things.
That leads straight to, though, man, we all have our thing. We all have going on, and we all handle our pieces differently, which is, I think, the reason why emotional intelligence and taking the time, making the time to understand your students, know what's going on, which takes asking and answering questions, right? It takes making the time to look people in the eye and have a conversation so that you understand them, is the only way you can create the optimum success level for that student. And for our teachers to have individual time with every single student is almost impossible. You have to really plan your classroom to be able to fit those moments in. And I did that. It's hard. And I mean, like, I had huge classes because of speech and debate that I requested to be that way. It was my district just took care of me. But I had to plan my room in a way that I had outside meetings or pulled on the side the kids who couldn't come in. Like, that one-on-one time is crazy important so that you can get to know those kids and then they can get to know you. Because what they're battling, whether it be ADD, ADHD, something at home, mental health, like, we all have something going on. It's all going to be handled differently. Those pieces are important, and you don't know them if you don't have a relationship there. I keep waiting for one of mine to walk in the door at the back.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think all of that, much like I was saying earlier with my conversation with Alfonso on his podcast, was in the end, we're always back to relationships, because if you want individualization, you got to have relationships. If you want emergent learning, you got to have relationships. If you want to be able to looked at for more, be able to be looked at for more than a label, you have to have relationship. I mean, it really all boils down to that, because you can if you're going to teach the child, you have to know who the child is. And that's really hard. And I mean, I don't think that you or I are saying that it's not hard to do. I mean, we're both saying that is really hard to do.
I'm saying it's worth it. It's hard.
Right. It is worth it
like
for where.
It might suck sometimes, okay? But what I say this, I say it's time to make the hard parts our heart parts, because it's more important.
See what you did there. You are such a teacher.
Speech and debate coach at that. I'm like, how does that sound? Rephrase that. Enrique said, add personal development. And I'm glad that you pointed that out, because I also believe that that's something that should be added into the curriculums of our universities. I think that we need our teachers to know where they are. And when I speak to schools, that's the first thing we start with. And I've had a couple of districts go, really? You're going to do strengths and weaknesses for teachers? Yep. Because I think it's good for me to know a personal strength of mine is this, and a personal weakness of mine is this. And then to share it with my pod, so that when I have a weakness happening, that I need someone who's got that opposite strength, they can be my person. I think it's good for your teams, whether it's, at school, within your classroom, within your teacher pods, for you to know what your strengths and weaknesses are for each other. Because I think there's a lot of power in using your power, your strengths, to empower others, right? But you can't help. And I got to talk with part of Northwestern State University's football team. We did a little personal growth and relationship building development, because reality is that also links to football field, right? Because we're human,
and we're in Texas, so obviously football has to be involved in it.
And I mean, I was real like, football, like me. Remember, I'm not athletic.
Yeah. I can't believe they let you out there.
Athletics. Let's play. But these guys, when you're talking about what's a strength that you have and what's a weakness that you have, and these gentlemen are sharing, this is a weakness I have. I don't feel good about this. And then you've got another guy on the team. It was so incredible how organically perfect it was. Almost every guy who had a weakness that they were willing to share, there was someone else on their team that had a strength that was like, man, I didn't realize that. And that growth mindset to share out your personal pieces, to look at what you can work at, and then to have somebody on your team go, you know what, I got you. That was impactful. And so then it's supportive. Right. And then that personal development, of course, we did team goal setting after that, but that personal development linked to a team development that reshapes how we work with each other, and it makes the relationship building pieces easier. But I think personal development is important.
So what you're saying is the answer is relationship. It's like when you're in Sunday school and the answer is always Jesus.
I mean, it's a good answer.
I was so good at Sunday school.
Cross applies.
I was
blanket answer.
Jesus. It was Jesus. When I was directing, I taught chapel for a while, and I'll tell this story and then we can close out, because I just got a reminder that I have a meeting that I have to be at where my brain has to work. And most likely the answers to all the questions that they're going to ask will be relationships. So I feel like I'm well prepped for that.
Relationship or Jesus. Yeah.
Or Jesus. Both great answers. Both great answers.
For today. Relationship and Jesus.
Relationships and Jesus, a little bit of both. It's fine. So when I taught chapel, we would do all these really great stories, and we would sing and do all the things, right? And then we would say, okay, guys, so, we're talking about Noah's Ark. Who rode on the boat? And they're like, Jesus. And I'm like, I love your enthusiasm, but no. And, what did they put on the boat? And they're like, Jesus. And I'm like, okay, yes.
But the debater in me is going to say this. Where does Jesus really live? All right?
In
Because
the
was
boat.
Jesus
In our
on the
heart.
ark? Yes, he was.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. And that was
Yes, he
always
was. There was.
so,
Those answers were right. You
they
define
were.
your
They were
definition
always
of
right.
Jesus.
You go, you children, you beautiful tiny people. All I
Jesus and
heard from that is
relationships.
you guys didn't hear anything I said, but you knew that Jesus would be the answer, so you just threw it at me, and you knew that I would take that as an answer because you
But
can't
what
say
we're
no.
also saying is that when you and I walk into school districts, as long as their answer is relationship, that they're gonna get a gold star too.
That's a problem. It really is. I mean, we might need to work on it. That can be the next thing that we
I
focus
do
on.
believe that the way we both break down how to get to the relationship piece and how to navigate that, whether it be as an individual, as a district, as a team, that those impactful parts are going to get you to the end result, maybe in different ways, but the end result is still the same. And we both still believe that relationship piece is different. We didn't even know each other a month ago. We've both been in education, different types of education, different levels of education. We've worked in different kinds of schools, and we're still saying the same thing. So I don't think that relationship can be a wrong answer.
Neither can Jesus. Neither can Jesus. So everything is right. Everybody wins. And here's what I feel like, since I couldn't win the game yesterday that we closed with, where I was supposed to read your lips and say what was happening. Here's what I really would like for to happen. I think you need to sing us just a tiny bit of the Lean on Me song, because then that, closes us out with relationship.
You know what's funny is I put a post out. I'm all for that. I sent a post out that said, and this is really what we should have been singing for today. It was, I will rise up, right? Yesterday was bad, but you know what we did today? We rose up, because yesterday we were so low. There was no other we were going to do good rising up. So I'm just going to dust off, rise up. Take 2 was better. And you know what? We talked about growth mindset, and we didn't really get time to come back to that. And I know you have to go, but in growth mindset, we talk about what could go wrong. Things could go wrong. We're not saying they won't. They did
Things
yesterday.
absolutely will go wrong, I think.
First part is, I will rise up, right? When they go wrong, I'm going to rise up, okay? So
and try it one more time.
And lean on me when you're not strong.
I know the motions.
I'll be your friend. Yeah. And I'll help you carry on. Okay.
I thank you.
I hope the rest of your school year is good. And thanks for everyone who tuned in today. And thanks, Chelsea, for being the rock star that I still want to be when I grow up. And we're frozen. It was a good try. It worked for a little while.